Hey everyone, welcome back to another driving review video here on the channel. Today you join me in the 2025 Nissan Murano Platinum, or the same vehicle or a similar spec that I drove just last month at Nissan's Technical Center up in Detroit, Michigan. Now, as usual, we're going to do an acceleration test, so putting the vehicle in sport mode, we'll do full throttle. Pretty darn good. So under the hood of this vehicle, you're gonna find a new 2-liter variable compression turbocharged 4-cylinder with 241 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque. Now this is paired also to a new ZF 9-speed automatic transmission. So gone is the CVT that you would formerly find inside of Nissan's Murano or some of their other vehicles within their lineup. And to a lot of people, this is a welcome change. Now, as I noted in my first drive video last month, I was very impressed and happy with the performance of this powertrain entirely, both from the 2-liter turbo as well as the 9-speed automatic. Now, having had a little bit more time behind the wheel of this vehicle, I will still say, on paper, the 241 horsepower and 260 pound-feet of torque doesn't seem all that impressive. It is 20 pound-feet more torque than that of the outgoing naturally aspirated V6, but thrust behind the wheel is plentiful, and I have no complaints with acceleration or performance. Now, what I have noted or noticed behind the wheel is that the first 10% or so of throttle application or just pedal travel and the 9-speed, there seems to be some minor drivability issues in how the powertrain reacts under select circumstances. So either coming off of a stop with very light throttle application, or just cruising along here behind this vehicle in front of us and trying to feather the throttle between the transmission, trying to figure out maybe a gear or two to downshift into, and the turbocharged engine or the entire powertrain and how it's tuned specifically. I just have noticed instances where there's just some delay in acceleration or not as much thrust or output as you'd expect for the amount of pedal input that you are giving this vehicle. Outside of that, I really haven't had too many complaints. The 9-speed overall, especially after it's warmed up, is pretty darn smooth. I haven't had any time behind the wheel of a former Murano with the CVT and the V6 combination, so this is simply coming off as kind of a fresh perspective to Nissan as a brand, their vehicles, in comparison to some of the other competition that is currently out there, both turbocharged 4-cylinders, 6-cylinders, whatever be it. But moving on, in terms of visibility and some other attributes of this vehicle, the only, I guess, visibility issue or things about it that is worth noting is that the belt line of this vehicle is fairly high, depending on how you have the seat position set. You have a fairly large dashboard out in front of you, and the rear visibility with the fixed in place second row headrest isn't amazing, but it's not the worst either. So you just kind of feel like you're within the vehicle rather than sitting on top like some other SUVs might give you that impression if it's a different kind of more wagon style of body. Everything about that, but visibility as a whole is not terrible. You have door mounted mirrors with little windows in front of it before the A-pillar. Like I said, the higher you have the seat, the better visibility out the front overlooking the dashboard you will have. Belt line's really not too bad. Over your shoulders actually really not bad either with the fairly thin B-pillars. And then out back, like I said, the headrests do intrude on either side, kind of towards the corners, and the glass height isn't all that great given the slanted or sloping tailgate design. But visibility, I would say, is pretty good, average for the course, but definitely not one of the best out there. Now, one of the attributes that I really enjoyed driving this vehicle both last month and now living with it for a week is the ride quality. Now, this vehicle is equipped with frequency responsive dampers, which are, I think a lot of people would tell you, is an upgrade over that of a standard damper, and means it has some kind of passive adjustment or, obviously will tune itself to the type of roadway and the amount of travel in input that is coming into the actual damper assembly itself. I think ride quality in this vehicle is very darn good. Even with these 21-inch alloy wheels that the Platinum comes equipped with, I have no complaints in terms of ride quality. I think it's actually very smooth, very refined. There's been a variety of different temperatures this week, from teens all the way up to mid 50s that we're currently in right now. So if you're looking for a very comfortable, plush, well refined, fairly nimble handling vehicle, all things considered, I think the Murano will certainly work for that type of desire inside of a vehicle. Now, coming up here to my bumpy section of road, as usual, this gives us a little bit of a more harsh environment to check out the handling and some of the suspension tuning. And going over these, I would say moderate size divots, frost heaves, and just overall road imperfections, it's very comfortable. Yes, you do move around here on the interior a little bit. You feel the bumps, but they are well controlled. And I have, like I said, zero complaints with the overall ride quality of the vehicle. Now, moving on to some of the other attributes I really have enjoyed about the Murano. That's the interior layout, design, and material usage. Now, as I mentioned in my dedicated likes and dislikes video, the seats are a standout highlight to me for a couple different reasons. Number one, this one being a Platinum, has the semi-aniline leather material, which is the highest quality that they offer within the Murano's lineup. They're also zero gravity in both the first and the second row, which means they have certain pressure criteria and overall ergonomics and pressure points of the seat that they have to meet. But these seats are very comfortable, and I have basically no complaints within reason for the average person out there. Now, I do have a fused back and a fused spine, which means headrests often give me issues in pushing my head forward and downward. So I have to adjust the seat back, tilt it, and recline it a little bit farther back than I would ideally like. But in the Murano, I think it's about right for the aspect or the attributes that my body has given me. It's one of the more comfortable seats that I have sitting in recent times, and is up there near the top. So if you have back issues or just don't find a lot of average vehicles and seats comfortable out there, I would recommend checking out the Murano, specifically here in the Platinum, and see how you feel about them, because I absolutely love them. Now, of course, they're going to be heated, ventilated, have back massage functions on both of the two front seats, memory here on the driver's side, and yeah, I really like the different interior color combinations that they have. They have a blue leather available. This is the black and dark brown, which matches all of the top materials on the door panels, which is very premium, very plush. Armrests are very nice. Minimal amount of gloss black plastics used throughout the interior, a little bit on the door panels, a little bit here in the center console. But I would say overall the interior is going to be a standout feature of the Murano versus some of the other competition, at least from what I have experienced. Now, another cool highlighted feature that they mentioned last month to us at our first drive event was the mimicked glass here across the dashboard and the door panels. So essentially, this is several layers of vinyl or material similar to that reflects and refracts light in kind of a three-dimensional theme, and it actually transitions from the center of the dashboard towards the door panels into a slightly different color. And just the way the light comes off of that material, it's just different from that of traditionally what you'll find on the interior of vehicles. So as a whole, ambient lighting's pretty cool. You have all of the color selections on the infotainment system, materials even with the gloss black in the center console area, but just high quality leather and everything around the interior, which I think Nissan did a fantastic job with. There was the engine stop start system that did actuate there at that stoplight. As you could see or tell, it was pretty smooth, but kind of average for the course in terms of gasoline internal combustion start stop systems. And the rest of the interior in terms of technology is pretty good also. We have dual 12.3-inch screens on this particular trim level, wireless Android Auto, Apple CarPlay. We have MyQ Garage integration. So if you have a MyQ Garage door opener, you can use that directly from the infotainment system. The one aspect I don't love about the UI is some of these buttons near the bottom that are always up on the Nissan screen. They are a little bit small in terms of their touch point. So going into settings, for example, I just wish they were like one or two font sizes larger at the bottom, because I think they are just a little bit of a small touch point. Now, with that being said, this kind of shelf area gives you a place to kind of rest your finger and then go ahead and press that button that you're desiring. So I think if they could adjust that just a little bit, I think it would make it a little bit easier to use, especially if you have larger fingers, larger hands, maybe you're using certain types of gloves. That might help out a little bit, but all things considered, wireless Android Auto was quick to connect within getting in the vehicle and dead reliable. I did not have one disconnection this week. Now getting onto the interstate, testing out a little bit of the handling here. Hear that little turbo whistle. I mean, handling's pretty darn good. That's 70 miles an hour, a little bit floaty there. And we are well up to speed. And one of the aspects I mentioned in my likes and dislikes, the steering wheel controls and the steering wheel buttons, I don't think they're the most intuitive out there in the way that they're laid out. I don't like the function, kind of all the plasticky bits, and they're not individual buttons. But in terms of ProPilot Assist over this last week, I think that its performance is kind of middle of the road versus some of the competitors. I had several instances where the lane centering was going over or onto the lines. This was both in well-marked lines and not so well-marked of lines out there. Some of the roads were salty earlier in the week before we got a little bit of rain that cleaned them up. And it was confusing maybe some of the salt markings with the lane markings. And if you have grooved roads that are parallel with the actual lane markings, that will also kind of trick the system a little bit. So I would say on well-marked roads like we're traveling right here where there's a great contrast, it's decent, but not the best I've used out there. I like the capacitive touch wheel, so you can simply keep your hand on it and it will sense that you're, controlling the vehicle and won't give you any pop-up messages or error messages here on the digital dashboard. Adaptive cruise works pretty good. You have plenty of different distance settings. And overall, I think that's basically it. It does not have any sort of automatic lane change function in this particular vehicle, but that is something they are rolling out in the Armada with its optional ProPilot Assist 2.0. So I guess if you like driver assistance technologies, ProPilot Assist, I would say, is pretty average. It's by far not the best system I've used out there, both in lane centering, detecting lane markings, things like that. And one other aspect I noticed driving at nighttime in specific is the automatic high beam assist is a little bit slower, or the criteria in which they've input into the system is not as sensitive in actually changing the high beams down to the low beams for oncoming drivers, because I've had several instances where basically they were directly in front of the vehicle and it was a little bit slow to respond to that. So I would like to see the automatic high beam assist adjusted a little bit, be a little bit more sensitive to oncoming drivers or just headlights and things like that. And obviously some continual tweaks to the ProPilot lane markings would definitely make that a little bit more class competitive. But as it is, everything functions pretty well. And I like the capacitive touch wheel versus a force feedback wheel. I'm not going to touch on MPG too much in this video because I haven't done a lot of driving that's appropriate, I guess, to get good or sufficient MPG. All of my driving has been city MPG or driving. So the computer, as of me driving this, is reading 14.5 MPG, which I know is not representative of this vehicle. There was some idle time earlier in the week when it was a little bit colder outside, remote starting, things like that. So on average, this vehicle is rated very similar to the outgoing naturally aspirated V6. So 21 city, I believe 27 out on the highway, and 24 MPG combined. But a few other items just to touch on. The Bose 10-speaker premium audio system inside this vehicle is pretty good, above average or better than that of standard audio systems, so I don't have any complaints with that. I like the fact that it has the approach, unlock, and walk away auto lock feature for the exterior, so you can simply keep the proximity key on your person. The vehicle will be already unlocked for you, assuming you approach the vehicle from the side, 2 doors. And if you walk away, either forget to lock it with the buttons on the handles or don't want to lock it, you can simply just walk away and it will automatically lock itself, alert you via tones on the outside. Those 2 features are not found on all of the competition, and I really have enjoyed using specifically the approach unlock during my week with this vehicle. The panoramic sunroof is nice, lets in a lot of daylight Above us, the HVAC system is pretty consistent in having the temperature set to about 72 degrees, which is what I find comfortable in a lot of vehicles out there. But I will say, when it was in the around 20 to 22 degrees earlier this week, I had the vehicle idling in my driveway for a period of time. I started driving it, have it set on the automatic climate. It would turn the fan speed up pretty much to high or near full blast to get the cabin warm, and it actually decreased the coolant temperature on the gauge cluster, very similar to the issue I have on my personal vehicle. Now, I will say I didn't necessarily feel any cold air coming out of the vents because it was sucking all the heat away from the engine. But that is something to note, that if it's, extremely cold outside, 5-10 degrees ambient temperature, you have the system set on auto at whatever temperature you want it to, it may take a little bit longer to actually warm the engine up, get up to full operating temperature, and thus, get the cabin up to its desired temperature versus that of either some other vehicles out there in the way that they've tuned the system, or just some larger displacement engines, such as the outgoing naturally aspirated V6 that they had in the previous model years of this vehicle. And I think lastly, the only other couple glitches or issues I had with this particular vehicle is, number one, the windshield washer pump on this one either has gone out or has stopped working for whatever reason. So I have no washer fluid. You can see I just tried to actuate it there, even though the reservoir itself is full. And number two, when I remote started this vehicle in my driveway using the key fob, it was sitting in the shade all times in the morning, say, about 8:30 a.m. Whenever I started to drive away, the dashboard lights and the digital cluster would be on the nighttime dim mode and would not automatically come up to the normal daylight brightness levels, if you will, until I actuated the headlight switch over here on the left side of the vehicle. This happened 4 different times, 4 different days with this particular Murano. Okay, so something I've noticed and had happened 2 days in a row now is the gauge or digital dashboard dimming is staying on the nighttime brightness versus going to the daylight brightness, even when the sun and, ambient conditions, should be more than enough to, trip the sensor to brighten up the gauge cluster. And with sunglasses, I can actually barely see the tachometer area. And the one way that I determined you can fix this is simply by rotating the dial here, putting the lights off of auto and flipping them back into auto. And you can see it stays bright and everything is exactly how it should have been. I'm not sure if this is a software glitch where the ambient light sensor is not sensing that there's plenty of daylight out to actually bring the dashboard gauges up to their brighter levels so you actually see them. My overall opinions of this vehicle are kind of mixed because I had very positive first impressions at my first drive event last month. Now, I will say, having the vehicle in your possession, using it how you would normally use it on a daily, weekly basis, gives you a different perspective of, I guess, livability and drivability with a vehicle versus spending about 2 hours with it on a quick first drive event. I still really like a lot about it. I think the 2-liter turbo is actually very punchy, very torquey, but I think there's some tuning that they need to do either with the throttle pedal in the standard drive mode specifically, and or with the 9-speed automatic transmission, just to make some low throttle situations, maybe even some elevation changes a little bit more responsive under the standard drive mode. Now, if you flick the vehicle into sport mode, as I showcased earlier, it'll automatically downshift a gear or two, bring the RPMs up, and the throttle is very responsive. I mean, that took a little bit of a delay, but once you get accelerating, this engine is actually pretty darn potent. So I think that is one area that I would like to see refined just a little bit further. But the seats themselves, the ride quality, the design, if you're into the design of this vehicle, they're all very positive. I think there's just a fair amount of stiff competition in the low to mid $50,000 price point in which this vehicle competes with. Now, some of the main competitors, as noted by Nissan, is the Hyundai Santa Fe and the Toyota Crown Signia, both of which I have a lot of experience with here on the channel and videos. So if you guys want to check those out, feel free to do so. But I think ultimately it's going to be up to you as to whether or not you think you want a more traditional experience behind the wheel with a gas engine and a 9-speed automatic transmission. You may not like the wagon body style of those other two vehicles that I just mentioned. But size-wise, in terms of mid-size, semi-premium experience, I think the Murano does a pretty darn good job. So I think that's pretty much where I'm going to leave this video. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. I want to give a huge thanks to Nissan for sending the Murano out for me to drive for a full week, get a little bit more time behind the wheel and experience it for myself. And make sure you guys stay tuned and subscribe and check out my likes and dislikes video, where I'll go feature by feature, tell you all the things that I really enjoyed about it, tell you all the things that I didn't enjoy so much about it. And ultimately, you guys can decide whether or not this is a vehicle that you guys are interested in looking at and or purchasing for yourself. So leave all that information below. And with all that being said, I appreciate continued support. Please hit that like button if you guys enjoyed and or found this video helpful. Subscribe if you haven't already. And with all that being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.